Hey everybody, welcome back, and this is data types, part of the variables section in module 0. And so the video walkthrough will go here. So what is programming? Programming is about telling a computer what to do, or manipulating data, or transferring data, or many other descriptions have been presented, but you want to consider that for our purposes, programming is essentially going to be taking data in one form and either manipulating it or transforming it in some fashion. The way we're going to do that is by functions. So we're going to learn about what kind of data exists for us in this prep course, and then we're going to learn ways to manipulate that data, and that's largely going to be functions. So we have different data types. We can store those data types in something called a variable, which instead of actually dealing with the number 4, we could deal with a variable number which would have been set equal to 4. So real quick, I'm going to open up the console, and I'm going to show you what I mean. We could have 4, and we could run that, or we could say variable num is equal to 4, and now for the time being, the value 4 is bound to the variable name num. So when I say num, it's going to tell me 4. So I think that there's something I can do here to turn off the, what would you call it? Enable tab moves, auto completion. There are ways you can get rid of that kind of stuff. Where it's, completing when I write num and it gives me like 50,000 things to, it's like, hey, do you mean this? There's ways to get rid of that, but for our purposes, we're going to take the advice of the previous lesson and we're going to open up a replit. Scroll on down to the bottom, click JavaScript, come over here to the settings, click to the dark theme. You don't need to do that. I'm going to turn off code intelligence because I'm, as a beginner, going to try to get used to running code without any sort of like intelligence. So I'm going to make that nice and large so y'all can see. So okay, so variables, and quick comment about okay. So this is basically going to go over one of the simplest things that you can write in terms of code, and this is actually aside from data types. This isn't a data type. If we say that most of our program is to tell computer to do something, this is a way for us to tell the computer nothing. The computer is going to ignore things that are denoted as comments. So we can either put 2 forward slashes, which is going to be a single line. I'm going to make this one smaller so it goes on a single line. Or we can do a multi-line comment. Now the cool part about a multi-line comment is, remember previously we said variable num is equal to 4. Multi-line comments, by multi, they also mean like half a line. Half a line of comments. So you can actually put a comment on the same line as code that will actually run, and so those are comments. If you look at, and you want to make sure that you do all the reading, in the videos I'm not going to do the reading for you, but comments are useful for a bunch of different reasons, and I highly suggest that you read all of the material for each section. So we haven't really even defined a data type yet, but that's okay. You're going to get a lot of that in this course, where we're going to kind of half glance at things and then sort of return back to our center, and our center is functions. So let's think about that piece of code that we wrote in the last coding challenge. Sorry, it wasn't a coding challenge, it was a console challenge. Coding challenges are coming up. But the last one that we wrote was variable elements is equal to document.elements by class name, and we passed title to it. And most lines in JavaScript are going to end with the semicolon. It's not like Java though. The semicolon doesn't always have to be there, and the piece of advice I give everybody is put it there until you're sure you don't need it. So document.getElements by class name title is an example of calling a function. In this case, it's going to grab any elements, and by elements they literally mean if the HTML of this page, it comes in a form of elements. So that's kind of why we call them elements. It's going to go through, it's going to grab any that have a name called title, and again, don't really worry about what's going on there. What we want to consider is that functions are, and here's the line, the prime mechanism with which you'll be manipulating data. There are extremely simple use cases like the one we're about to do, and ones that get slightly more complicated like this one, which you probably don't quite understand yet, but that is okay. The reason that we're introducing comments and the reason that we're introducing functions here is because there's going to be a lot of comments surrounding some of the code that you're going to be going over, and by and large, writing functions is pretty much all we're going to be doing for the next large period, basically until you get to the technical interview. The technical interview is going to test your ability to write functions under certain scenarios, so let's get started with them. So here's another thing that I'm going to read just because it's important. In the next coding challenge on the next page, you're going to see something that says run tests, and it's like, what does that mean? So we're going to grab this code, and we're going to bring it over to our replit, and we're going to paste it in. This function has one simple operation. It returns 1. So function means that I have a function. This is the name of the function. Here's where I would put any parameters that the function would take. This one doesn't take any. Again, don't worry about any of this. It's an exposure therapy kind of program, so you're going to hear what I just said over and over and over again. Do not worry if it doesn't make sense yet. So inside of the function body, which I denote by this curly brace and this curly brace, I'm going to write return 1. And essentially that's all this function is going to do when I run it. So this is the function definition, and this is a call to the function. So this part of the code is similar to what happens when you click run tests. So I'm going to declare a variable result, and I'm going to assign it, which is what this equal sign means, to the return value of this function call, or essentially whatever this expression evaluates to. Again, I don't get all of that. Don't worry about it. You're going to hear it over and over again, and it's going to kind of sink in through that. I'm then going to say console.log, which we have seen, which is actually a function. It's a function, or we should, well, let's not worry about that, but it's a function that's going to log something to the console. And so I've saved that into my variable result, and then I'm going to log it to the console. I then have another comment here which says should log 1 to the console. So when I hit run, I should see 1. I'm also going to see undefined. We went over why that's the case, but don't worry about it if it doesn't really make sense. Just consider that this part is not what the console is being logged to the console. This part is. So we've now run our first function. Congratulations. Let's go back to the data types. It says, despite the possibly obvious nature of this function, it's part of software engineering to verify that your code works using automated tests. So when you hit submit or run test on a coding challenge, basically that's what's going to happen. It's going to take the function definition, which would essentially be this part here, that you're going to write for the following exercises, and then it's going to do something similar to this, where it checks what you got from the function when you ran it, and this is the test speaking, so the tests are going to take your function and run it. They're going to take the value that they get, and then they're going to compare that to something that we told that test to check for. So it's like, hey, and that was essentially what we did when we looked over here and said, should log 1 to the console. We look at the console says 1. So we have tested that this function works in one scenario. Automated tests, or the run tests, which are going to happen in the following lessons, are basically a way for the computer to do that for you. Now, way later on in Module 2, you're going to start writing those tests and start thinking about why the tests work or why they're incomplete. But for now, let's just consider that all we needed to do here was run this code in a REPL, see the return value, and get a nice, calm introduction to the idea that this is all going to be about functions. So now that we have an idea of functions and that functions are going to be dealing with data, let's introduce the first data type we're going to talk about, which is undefined, and that's going to be in the next lesson. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't understand what's going on yet, don't worry about it. Hang in there. This will all start to make sense. It's going to be kind of like a circular approach to this, and by the end, you'll be typing JavaScript with well, maybe not ease, but you'll be getting better kind of as we go. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.